All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm David Lang, and I'm very excited about the conversation today. The sports industry is experiencing, as we all know, a tidal wave of change amidst the pandemic and the reckoning over racial injustice. As a result, every aspect of the sports ecosystem is being impacted. Leagues, teams, media properties, brands are all in the process of reevaluating and reimagining many aspects of the sports business. Today, we get to hear from some of the people on the front lines, and I am really excited to welcome them. First of all, Laura Gentile, SVP of Marketing at ESPN, Rob Master, VP of Media and Digital Engagement at Unilever, Danny Green, two-time NBA champion. He's currently with the Lakers. He unfortunately beat my beloved Warriors last year, but I forgive you for that. And Josh Okogie, starting guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Both Danny and Josh have used their platforms and social influence to affect change since the horrific death of George Floyd. Each of them also have a history of taking action and giving back. First, let's start with the changing landscape of sports due to COVID-19. Laura, I would love to start with you. Just a simple, direct question. How in the world do you get fans close to the game when they're not allowed in the arena and the stadium? Or in other words, how do you create experiences with fans, given the current no attendance policy, but also fans may be fearful of gathering for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, for us at ESPN, we've now lived without live sports for quite a while, 3-4 months where our programming schedule was completely turned upside down. So first we started with a whole new take on content. I think many of you probably have seen The Last Dance. That was something that we take great pride in that, that wasn't slated to run until late June, July originally. And in the midst of coronavirus and the lockdown, fans were literally clamoring for, can you move that start date up? And we managed to do that. We didn't have all 10 episodes finished. We only had 8. And we really hustled to get those last 2 done and to really make it a marquee event for us. So without live sports, we really turned our sites to being as innovative and creative as we could be. And Last Dance was one of those examples. But in terms of the in-stadium situation, I don't know how long it's going to be before we have fans in attendance. So I think from our perspective at ESPN, it's all about the safety players. It's all about them being comfortable, ideally everything at the Wide World of Sports complex and the NBA goes off beautifully, hopefully, and as safely as possible. But we're just trying to give fans a great experience in the home, on digital, across social, and really engaging from a content perspective.
Rob, Unilever as a whole, you guys have been investing in sports for years, and you and I have worked together for a long time. What's your approach? What do you look for? And has it changed? At least because for the immediate future, there's not going to be any fans in the stands.
Yeah, so I think if I step back and think about the NCAA, so we're an NCAA sponsor, been going on almost 10 years, obviously a marquee property. And unfortunately, the cancellation was heartbreaking for all the student athletes and all those involved. So while we have yet to face like the non-fan experience, I would say our approach, I think, regardless of how we go forward, probably remains around the same principles. And I think about kind of 4 things. So first would be we want to sure we're relevant with our creative and storytelling to the sport and the property. So whether it be Dove Men or Degree or Axe, it's all about connecting our brands with properties and people who embody the sport. So in this case, it was like greats like Dwayne Wade and Steph Curry or Coach Izzo or Coach Wright. And we also oftentimes use historical footage, again, to like connect the experience of our brands and be relevant to the property. The second thing we think a lot about is being fan first. So we love to activate our brands with the fan at the center. And I think it's worked really well. And so, in fact, I think we did something with you in the last NCAA tournament with Degree. We brought the Mammoth Bench Mob back. So people may remember those guys. They were kind of like the bench warmers a couple of years ago, and they did all these great dances. So we actually brought them back this last NCAA tournament, and we actually had some of the original bench mob. Of course, we could pay them because they're no longer student athletes. And so we actually went to Twitter and we had people vote on which dance they should do. And so it was a great way to engage fans. And it's not just there we're associated with the NCAA Women's and Soccer Championship. So we did soccer clinics at the championship. So we put the fan at the center, and that's important. I think, one or two last things is we're a purpose-driven company, so we want to make sure we bring our purpose and show up wherever we are. And so Dove Men, which is one of our brands we're super proud of, has a legacy project. And they love to say we leave a place better than we found it. So when we go to a Final Four city, we build a hoop court or fix a rec center for the hoop court. So we leave it better than we found. And then the last but not least is retail. We think about the retail environment. The NCAA has become like this cultural event for a month. And it's so great to engage with retailers and fans and consumers by markets at a retail environment with kind of cool experiences. So that I think, regardless of COVID or not, these are the types of things that we're going to focus on.
So Danny and Josh, so I'm a huge sports fan. Hoops is my game, but actually everybody on this panel is a huge sports fan. Largely an ACC panel, as Laura so appropriately pointed out. Although Masters, Big Ten, and I'm Pac-12. I corrected that for you. I thank you for the Wisconsin Cup. So here's a question for you, and Danny, you're going into a bubble soon, right? So when we talk about fans or games without fans, from a marketing standpoint or a broadcast standpoint, from a player standpoint, we all know hostile environment, tough on the road, home crowd, what it does for the players. You're in a bubble, literally, to play games with no fans. How bizarre is that going to be?
I said I can tell you when I get there, but I can only guess and kind of predict, because I haven't played in a game or a stand or arena without fans since I was, elementary.
Right.
I can't remember the last time. Even middle school we had fans, high school we had fans, college, of course, a lot of fans. So I can't remember the last time that I was in an arena or any type of gym without fans. Hopefully they'll let some other players in, they can watch the game,
right,
have some type of fan noise or some music to make it a little more normal. But the advantage of home court is gone now. There are no home court fans. They're trying to figure out ways to give those higher seeded teams an advantage, some way, somehow, where there's more possessions, et cetera. But I imagine it's going to be very weird. I imagine it's going to be guys are going to be a little bit out of their normal atmosphere, their normal energy, and that adrenaline, I feel like, is not going to be there as much as it normally is. The reason we're able to get up and do a lot of things that we do, especially at the home team, is the adrenaline, even on the road, but playing in front of fans. And I've seen some interesting things over the last couple of weeks, with other countries playing in different arenas, different cities. I had some Zoom calls on the Jumbotron, which is kind of weird, but I mean, we expect that, the streaming will go through the roof. So we feel like a lot of people will be watching streaming, and hopefully so that we can have some fan noise will make it normal for us.
Yeah. So Josh, obviously the Timberwolves didn't make it into the bubble, unfortunately. But when's the last time you played a game other than a practice scrimmage, if you will, without fans?
I didn't start playing basketball myself till about 6th grade. So I don't think I've ever played a game with any fans. I don't remember. It's actually crazy. Just even the thought of playing a game with no fans right before the NBA suspended the season. We had meetings with our medical people saying that, we should look forward to playing with no fans pretty soon. Just to wrap my head around that at that time was kind of hard. But now seeing that it's about to become the reality, it's tough. I can't imagine.
It's going to be crazy. So Laura, from a marketing standpoint, have you adjusted the marketing during the lockdown? I mean, obviously the ESPN programming lineup has had to change, right? You guys brought Last Dance in 2 months early. And by the way, I personally thought it was brilliant and just amazing to watch. Since what's going on in the world today, every day feels like tectonic shifts below our feet, constantly changing. How are you keeping your pulse on fan sentiment?
Yeah, well, one little shout out about fans. As a Duke field hockey player, we never had fans. No. So if you need any tips, I can give you tips.
But as a North Carolina basketball player, Danny had lots of fans.
Yeah, we'll need some help with that. I'll need some tips on that for sure.
Mental toughness. No, so no, for us, again, at ESPN, we really just look at ourselves as the world's biggest sports fan. So when we're feeling it and we're feeling the loss of live sports and we're feeling that void, we're constantly talking to our fans. And things have shifted now where it's a little bit, you have to have perspective and you have to realize the place that sports plays in our society. And I think there's definitely that conversation about how important is sports right now. We got, there's so much more going on in terms of social justice and the fight against racism and things like that should take precedent right now. But in the early days of coronavirus, people were really feeling, super fearful, a lot of anxiety as to, what this means for the future. And sports usually is an escape in those kind of situations. And it wasn't. So, we were just constantly monitoring that, constantly talking to our fans. And then again, just trying to be as innovative as possible, don't overlook the Ocho, but we did things like the Ocho again and signed on for Korean baseball so you could watch, baseball at 5 a.m. if you want to. And that's another example of trying to make that telecast engaging even without fans. And they're doing it with male and female cheerleaders and stuffed animals behind home plate. I mean, it's kind of amazing how innovative you could be just to make the viewing experience engaging.
Yeah.
But David, to your point, it's just all about continuing to stay connected with our fans and trying to understand the role that sports plays. But everybody's missing it in a huge way, particularly avid sports fans, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah, no. As a sports junkie trying to go to bed at night, I'm searching for any old game to watch. I mean, it's pathetic. My wife laughs at me, but it is that comfort, when you love sports, with all the craziness going on in the world today. Of just, I'm just watching old games, just to kind of ground myself. Rob, with the world of sports and sports production and just everything has changed a lot over the past couple of years. But do big brands like Unilever see the sports world evolving and changing post-COVID, or is that too much of a crystal ball question? Like, who the hell really knows?
Yeah. Well, so let me weigh in on playing with no fans, because I still play. I play ice hockey like in an old man's league, and I've been playing for a long time, and including in championship games, and we never have fans. So, Danny, I'm happy to help you talk through what to expect, even in championship games, what it's like to have no fans. So I think, David, it's a great question, and I mean, COVID aside, I think we've seen the last couple of years enormous changes in how what's happening in sports. I think there's a couple key trends that we look at sports from a brand perspective that we're watching closely. First is I think sports represent, I would call, the last bastion of attention. In a world of DVRs and Netflix and all the other services, I saw a stat a year or two ago, and it said that on any given night, nearly 50% of the most watched program on television was a sporting event. So think about that. It's like 180 nights, a sporting event was the most watched program on television, which is, I think, a remarkable shift from just a decade ago. Even so, from a couple of years ago, just gives you a sense for a live attention programming in sports. The second, which is interesting, is demographics. I think certainly women have participated in sports in large numbers, and maybe the fandom of it didn't follow. I think that's begun to change. And as a company like ours, with one of the leading kind of health and personal beauty care companies, our core target is females. And so as we look at sports, if you look at all the major sports, almost a third of viewership is female, and actually NFL is even higher. And then actually, if you weigh in the tentpole events like NCAA or NBA playoffs, it's closer to 40%. So again, the demographic shift for us is a trend we're watching closely over the last couple of years. And I think an enormous change, and I think it speaks to the guys we have on the panel here today, is the social media. That has really changed how people engage and the passion. I mean, your ability now to take your rap or your fandom outside of your core group and go directly to Josh and Danny to talk about the experience, I think, and what they're up to is really interesting. And it's funny because people love movies and TV and all that stuff, but sports by far is the most compelling thing in social media. The numbers are staggering. Yeah. And it's funny, the last thing I'll say on that, the trend that we're watching closely, and it started with fantasy sports, which is 60 million people play fantasy sports. I think it's legalized sports gambling, because that's going to, I think, revolutionize fandom in a different way. Because you'll be able to bet on a football series, you'll be able to bet on at bat. You can bet on who's going to have the most threes, a team or a player. And I think that's going to be a really interesting perspective for fans.
Yeah. Well, the tribalism of fandom through gambling, I think, just adds a whole nother dimension. And one shout out to Laura, because, you know, Rob, you talk about the growth of women. ESPNW was Laura's baby, and like from the ground up, and that's made a huge impact, you know, on the entire industry. But what you were talking about, Rob, on the social influence leads us to the next part of the conversation. I think it's really important, you know, athletes as influencers, social influence, taking action. So, Danny and Josh, in my opinion, when I look back like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the leagues had the most power, or influence might be a better word, then the teams, then the players. Now today, I think it's completely opposite. I think the players have the most influence because your platforms and your voices. Would you agree with that kind of idea?
For sure. I think as time has gone past or gone over, social media has obviously grown and become a big hit. Now people have a direct insight to our lives and more interested in behind the scenes of what we're doing. And then when they see that we're kind of like normal people, regular people do the same things that they do, you know, they kind of, you know, they respect it, but they also, you know, said more interested in what we have to say than what the organization or team has to say, coming from a fan standpoint or coming from a normal player standpoint, because believe it or not, we're employees just like them. You know, we have bosses, they have bosses.
Right.
They understand our side of it, their perspective. They want to see both sides of it. And when things like The Last Dance comes out, you know, things that I didn't get to see or hear or know about, you know, why the Bulls broke up or what was going on with Jerry, from the management on down.
Right.
It shows a lot of different sides of the story. It makes it interesting, and people start to understand, you know, why Scotty sat out, why Mike had his problems, why these people had issues, and they start to understand and take the player side and know that we're human. So them to be able to relate to us in that way, so it makes it more interesting, and they care to hear from us more first before they, you know, care to hear from the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely second that. I think just the evolution of social media definitely, you know, enhances the ability for, the general people to kind of relate to us. They see what we're doing on our everyday lives. We know a lot of people, a lot of players, they post so often. So, you know, I think that fans feel like they know us to a certain degree. You know, I know back in the days, you know, they didn't really have social media. So it was hard for, you know, players to, if a player had a thought, unless he goes ESPN, you know, after the game, interviews him and he says something on national television, it was kind of hard to get your point across because, you know, there was no platform for that. But, you know, as social media is today, you know, I could literally type something right now and everybody in the world could see it. So, and I think, you know, people, you know, love the players. A lot of people love teams, but a lot of people follow players. You know, Danny can attest to that. There's a lot of people who are Danny Green fans. A lot of people are LeBron James fans. A lot of people follow players, not so much as teams nowadays. So I would say a lot of players just have a better platform and a better way to kind of speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Rob, you agree? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, no, I think you put it right. If you think about sports as a pyramid, because I think that the paradigm of influence in sports is totally upended. Because you look at it as a pyramid. Historically, as you were saying, at the top was the leagues, then the teams, and the players were at the bottom. The outlets for them to communicate or connect with fans was minimal. And really, it's what the league said went, and then maybe the team in the local market, and then the fans that they got an interview. But now I think it's completely flipped, or in the midst of that, where you look at that same pyramid, it's the players, then the teams, and then the league. And I think, as these guys were saying, it's really driven by social media. I heard a great term from, I think, a company called the Sports Innovation Lab, and they refer to this idea of a fluid fan. This fluid fan, like they embrace fantasy sports, social media, and I think the impact of free agency has completely changed the game, literally, of how we engage with sports. So I'm from Chicago, and I'm a diehard Bears fan, but I have like friends who are diehard Bears fans who are cheering for the Packers because of Aaron Rodgers. He's on their fantasy team, and that's just like such a mind-boggling concept.
Yep.
And that's one example, of course, but I think that's really an interesting part of this change of fandom is that people cheer for players, not teams. And David, we've seen it actually. We've seen that influence. So go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, no, and David, and it's not more prominent than in the NBA. You know, we look at all the leagues as you can imagine, and it's so prominent when it comes to the NBA that, you know, Danny Green and Josh and LeBron and all these guys, like they have real followers that transcend their actual team, and it's different even than it is on the NFL or Major League Baseball. These are real individuals that have been able to establish individual brands.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times for what I do in my day job, the question is, do you do a team deal? Do you do a league deal? Or do you just reach the players who have a similar purpose to what your brand stands for, and you really want to partner? Like, there are so many different types of options now where you can just go straight to the source, meaning the players, and really do some, have an interesting and substantial relationship. And
David, just to jump in on that, I think to Laura's point about the NBA, I think is different because we did something with you guys where early in COVID, we went out to a couple of players, Seth Curry, Jimmer, Wes Matthews, and a couple other guys, and we with their families in some cases did these workouts to raise money for kind of COVID frontline,
first responders.
So I think that was like, and it was like we connected directly with, again, NBA players are a bit unique that way. We also we're doing something for our degree band with Kevin Durant, where we're in the midst of like, the majority of kids now are like stuck inside, which is not necessarily new. They weren't outside playing as much as before, but COVID's only exacerbated that problem. So we're working with Kevin Durant on the whole Move campaign, which again is aligned with our brand and movement.
Right.
And so we'll keep moving campaign. So I think that's a great, Laura's right on, as you are. The NBA is like a really unique in that way.
Yeah. So
I also
go on,
David. I also think that players get more of a following or more of a platform because a lot of them play in different markets, and when they leave those markets, they still keep those fans.
Yep.
So you're out as a player, because sometimes you go to an organization that's just for that city, but if certain players have played in 3 or 4 different organizations, you still have those markets. All of Canada, even though I'm not in Toronto anymore, a lot of Canadians still follow me. It's a lot of people where Josh from school still follow him, even though he not have been played in Minnesota when he was in high school or college. So a lot of players have fan bases all around the country and some around the world. You have some players from Europe and other places. So then that outreach is a lot bigger than when you go directly to the organization.
Yeah,
and I also want to add something to that if I can.
Yeah, please.
Just like Danny said, like, you might, like, he play in Toronto, his fans don't leave when he leaves. They follow him. And also a guy like, Danny, who does things for the community, he has fans that aren't just there for basketball. So, the fans that he gets, for doing things with the community, they stay with him too. So, as like the Minnesota Timberwolves or the LA Lakers or the NBA as a whole, majority of their fans are just basketball fans because that's the kind of content that they provide. A guy like I said, Danny, who does the stuff for community, he might have people in different aspects of life that follow him. So I feel like as an athlete, we may have more outreach in that sense as well.
Absolutely. Well,
David, I don't think you can underestimate just the intersection too, especially with the NBA, with entertainment. The fact that a lot of these folks, these athletes, are super creative. And whether it's getting involved in music or having their own production companies or producing films, I think that's another whole way that NBA players sort of transcend, stay in your lane, you're an athlete. And I think that's why their fan bases are so interesting and multifaceted.
Yeah, it's not just entertainment. I think the NBA has become lifestyle, and it probably started, in the 90s with the Dream Team. And it became global, but it was not only the best in the world in a sport, but it was a lifestyle everybody wanted to emulate. And it's interesting now, right? Because if you fast forward with the horrific death of George Floyd a few weeks ago, and so many countless others before him, many athletes are out front taking action and inspiring change, right? We have LeBron, Trae Young, other athletes using their voices to get out the vote in November. Josh, I saw on your IG last Friday on Juneteenth, you co-hosted an event with Minnesota Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph, giving food, water back to the community, etc. It gave me tingles. It was inspiring. Tell everybody about it, because I thought it was a great event.
Yeah, I reside in Atlanta, so I wanted to go back to Minnesota just to kind of get accustomed to things and kind of get back in the gym. And I got to Minnesota on a Sunday, and then that next Monday is where George Floyd died. So when that whole thing happened, and I was also in Atlanta when Ahmaud Arbery, that whole case was coming back up. So I was kind of felt like I was just in the midst of everything. So I felt like I had to do something. I didn't know what to do, but I felt like I had to do something. So I was able to attend the press conference that Steven Jackson hosted in Minnesota City Hall. So just seeing that and seeing all the emotion, I knew that doing nothing wasn't a choice. And I've been looking for things to do, and Kyle Rudolph and me and him actually kind of teamed up together to do something in the city of Minnesota, because they looted and they burnt down certain parts of the city. So we actually went to the site where they burnt down, not burnt down the Target, but they looted the Target and the Cub Foods. We went to that big parking lot and we stationed there, and we had like semis come in full of donations of pharmaceuticals. You can receive medical attention if you need any non-perishable items, food, anything that you really need. And it was just to see the turnout, it was like beautiful, because like in the midst of like burnt down buildings and looted stores, you had like the community come together, and it was perfect. And I think that that's when the healing starts with the people in the community.
Yeah, and just to see, I mean, you were live on your IG that you had posted, the kids coming up to you of all colors, just going, "This is a once in a lifetime thing. Thank you so much, and this means so much." And just the genuine ness of the children and what it meant to them and to the families. And Dana, you do a lot too, right? You've got your podcast, Inside the Green Room with Harrison Sanford. Love the episode with Bakari Sellers.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast and what the intent of it is, and why it's important for you.
Well, I can't take credit for Harrison's the one that came to me and pitched it, and Amjad is the brain behind everything. So big shout out to Amjad Osman. Those guys are amazing and great. They make it easy for me to just show up and just talk sports. But when he came to me with about the pod, I wasn't too confident about it. But when we got to Toronto and I started having fun with it. It turned out pretty great, and I'll be able to use that platform for many different reasons, many different ways. To get my opinion out there. Also give some of my teammates, friends, and close ones who are big, to interview them, understand them, learn about them, but also give them an opportunity to share their opinions on the platform.
Right.
But during this pandemic, it's been the only way to get my voice out there, use that platform, and I've extended it to my teammates, whoever wants to get on and express their opinions or their perspective on certain things. So we've had a couple episodes or a couple things where we had discussed, obviously, different times, the pandemic. And then, of course, the social injustices or the movements that's going on, Black Lives Matter movement. So it's important, but I also thought it's important to get out there and physically, be there. I didn't, take a bunch of pictures or anything, but I went out there to see what it was like. Everybody obviously was scared, make sure you be safe, get some security. But I didn't get any security. I just went out there, and it's easy to be going detective when you're wearing masks and gloves and hoodies, so nobody can really see you. So I saw a lot of people out there, and it was beautiful, man, to see different colors, cultures, faces, all supporting it and coming together and showing a lot of love. But the platform has come to my advantage when it needs to. Sometimes you're not able to, let your coach know how you really feel, or management, and you can do it in a respectable way on a podcast. You can let the world know, and to give people an insight to guys who don't have social media. Avery Bradley just recently opted out, but he doesn't have any social media. I'm sure people would love to hear from him and see what he has to say and why. It's not all they can do is read but a podcast or some media outlet that they have nearby can be a way to hear what he really thinks. And also, we're inside the bubble. People are gonna know what's going on in the bubble. How is it living there? So
right.
I'm sure people can be like, "Yo, we need some episodes inside the bubble." People are already like, "You need to make a journal. You need to get a what is it? The people wear the device,
GoPro,
the camera,
GoPro.
There you go, GoPro, your GoPro, and we walking around in there. So everybody wants the content and what's behind the scenes. So, podcasts and things like that are just behind the scene, inside opinions, kind of like barbershop talk. They really want to know what players think about other players, other people in certain situations. So it's been great, man. I've had a lot of fun with it, and right now it's been very useful and helpful to, I said, get out and get some messages across to what's important.
Right.
And I was. Thank Bakari for joining us and a bunch of other people. But it was a great episode, and people are starting to listen and educate themselves and learn about a lot of our history and a lot of things that we all differently go through.
Yep. Well, I think it's it's interesting in forms like podcasts, and you're talking about just journaling and hearing what people actually say. Part of the things of The Last Dance I found most fascinating were the anecdotal things that camera picked up that weren't, like straight to camera. It wasn't staged. It wasn't manufactured. It's just the talking in the locker room that was so special because it's like who they were, and what they were doing. And it was like you were eavesdropping in on this special moment. And I think, Danny, when you guys are just talking candidly, it's a lot like that, right? Because you just get to understand what a person's about and what they think. And I think it's really important. Josh, you had a conversation recently with The Athletic and that I thought was really interesting. And I'm going to paraphrase something you said that I think is important. Tell me if I get this paraphrase wrong in any way. But you said, I'm a big believer in that the things we ignore today can become the standards for tomorrow. And if we ignore acts like this, I think you were referencing George Floyd, then this is who we become as people. That's why I can't ignore this. I can't condone this. And I think for me, that's a really important statement. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I feel like, just humanity, doesn't even have anything to do with the bigger picture of social reform. Just to give you an example, if my mom tells me every day, make sure you clean your bed, and I wake up and go about my day, brush my teeth, and I don't clean my bed, if my mom ignores that, it's going to become the standard. Mm-hmm. So if I wake up and I don't do it, and my mom says, look, son, you didn't do this, I told you to do this, you have to do this. And then that becomes the standard. So now every day I will continue to make my bed. So like, that's what we have to do as a community. We have to keep this conversation going. We have to be honest, we have to hold each other accountable, because if we continue to ignore this, as you can see, it's a trend. It happens every day. Another Black guy, dies at the hands of police enforcement, and we can't ignore it no more. Because I know that there's a lot of good people out there who know that the world could be better, and we just have to, set this straight so we can have a better standard.
Agreed.
Also, and I think back to that, you'll listen to your mom a little more if there was some type of punishment.
Exactly.
There has to be consequences or repercussions when things are not done or done the right way, the way you want them to be done. But big shout out to my co-host and Amjad, my producer, Amjad Osman. He said something interesting to me that stuck with me. And he's saying it's very important, even though it sucks and a lot of these things are happening that are bad, but it's very important that they are happening, because if they don't happen, we can't fix them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If big mistakes by people higher up or people with a name, a celebrity, these conversations, these uncomfortable conversations, these uncomfortable situations have to happen in order to have change, so that we can be better and correct it. So I think it's great that a lot of athletes are speaking up, even if their opinion is wrong. We can educate them, and then they can educate their following, their platform, the people that look up to them, because maybe they don't know. But I think it starts with us speaking out, us educating each other, us using our platform, like you said. But it also takes some big mistakes for some good change to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Laura, on the topic of racial inequality in the world today, how's ESPN addressing the issues of racial injustice via sports and athletes?
Well, as Danny and Josh mentioned, I mean, this has just sparked so many important conversations. And to your point, uncomfortable conversations. As a company at ESPN, we've had diversity and inclusion as a priority for our company for a very long time. But this has really sparked a whole new level of engagement and the desire to have action, and the desire for a lot of us to be more active allies than maybe ever before. You almost felt like if you weren't a part of the problem, you were okay, but you also weren't doing anything actively to change it either. Right. And I think there's a lot more people actively trying to change and actively trying to get engaged on the issues and get educated on the issues. We just had a team meeting today around microaggressions and things that people say and do, maybe unbeknownst to themselves, they're actually offensive. And those are great conversations to have, because people bump along and don't realize what they're doing is not creating change and not helping the situation. But we really look from a marketing perspective. Our work again with the NBA, we just did a whole piece around Black Lives Matter, both working with the NBA and then as ESPN ourselves, and really standing behind that statement and standing against racism. And again, I don't know, as a company, we've ever actively said that. I think we've felt it, but we've never actively said it. And I think it's very healthy that we came out and said it.
Yeah. Well, Rob, what about Unilever? How important is it for brands to take a position on issues like racism and social injustice?
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. It's an amazing conversation, just listening to everyone speak. I mean, I think ultimately I mean, Unilever believes that businesses are not separate from society, and that includes our brands, but we're actually integral to the society. And we believe we have a responsibility to take action and play a role in fighting for an equitable society. So, to us, racial issues are human rights issues. And I think, as an organization, Unilever, we're built around purpose. For 100+ years ago, that's how we were founded. And I think, our brands take positions all the time. And so whether it be brands like Dove, who believes that, the women's self-esteem and like positive body image, or Seventh Generation is around climate justice, or Ben and Jerry's certainly very relevant here around social justice and Black Lives Matter. So it's important. Brands are part of society and they're part of the fabric. So I think, we play a role in that. I think even this, if I think about this last weekend on Father's Day, actually on the ESPYs, so on Laura's channel on ESPN, we did a program with Dove Men Plus Care, and we honored men, fathers who were taken too soon, and we called it #Father's Day Taken, and it was a fundraising initiative for all the thousands of Black dads who've lost their lives from racism or violence, and it's for their families. And so we have a whole fund. We're investing $1 million to support the families left behind. So we have a role to help, I think, make racial issues human issues.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. They are human issues. And Laura, so many companies feel it, but are now saying it and then taking action. Taking action, I personally believe is the key, because if you don't take action, you're really part of the problem, because, things need to change. And speaking of the Black Lives Matter movement, Danny, Kyrie had said something recently about he didn't want the NBA, and a few of the players supported him, right? He didn't want the NBA to continue this season because he didn't think Black Lives Matter, people would forget about it and people would focus on basketball. LeBron said, hey, this doesn't affect his ability to inspire, meaningful change in society. I'm curious where you two kind of fall on that question.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short because I know we don't have a lot of time left.
Yeah,
but I was on that call actually. And a lot of guys were in that. We're just ideas, but unfortunately the call got leaked, and everything that we talk about gets leaked. So before we can move as one voice, things are already getting out, and we already look divided. But I understand where Kyrie's coming from. I understand where Dwight, Avery, all those guys came from, in terms of this is a good thing. This is a good time to use our power, or to use our platform to get some real change if we threaten to not play. I thought it's a good idea, but at the same time, I think we do need to play, and it's even better and more efficient if we use the platforms when we're in Orlando. So I agree with LeBron in that aspect of it, that we don't have to stop playing to keep to use or to get our point across, or to get our words and opinions and perspective out there, or to continue the passions that we have. Obviously, what's going on right now is number one priority, but we can use that in Orlando. We don't have to, we're not going to be a distraction. We just have to stay focused. And I think it's easier if we come together there, all our minds together at one, and then continue to keep, especially with no fans, it's easy to be focused. No fans, no friends, family, or loved ones are there for the first 2 months. I think we could definitely put together some great ideas with all I wouldn't have to do as many Zoom calls. We can do meeting calls where nothing gets leaked, and actually move together as one voice, and get some good things done. I agree in that aspect of what said with LeBron, and then just I don't think we will be a distraction at all. It depends on us, and we got to keep it in mind and make sure it's an emphasis when we are down there in the bubble.
Well, anything we can do to help, please let us know. Josh, one last quick thing for you, because I know you wanted to talk about this, about young Black kids, communities, and education and life skills.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But before I get into that, I just wanted to piggyback something Danny said. Just like Laura and ESPN's decision to move the Last Dance, earlier, because everybody would be watching because there's nothing else to watch. I think if the NBA comes back, literally everybody's eyes will be on the NBA. And that's actually, it gives the players the advantage, because in Minnesota, where I am now, there's still protests going on every day. But you don't see that no more because it's not new news. So with the NBA coming back, everybody's going to be watching. You can, you can take the leverage even higher another level. And there's so many different innovative and nice things that we can do with that power. So I think coming together will actually help that in that sense, if we use that power right.
Mm-hmm.
So Danny, please get that message across. But yeah, I believe that as a community, even as myself, we have to do a better job on giving back to our roots and not anything materialistic, more so knowledge and information. I think that, as like I was telling you earlier, David, as there's a lot of Black kids right now who are in single parent households, and they're not being taught things that are really sustainable and really that they need to be an adult. Like, guys, kids who are Black in single parent households, they don't know what it is to vote. They don't know anything about investments. I'm not telling you teach them about the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, but they need to know what's the difference between a stock and a bond and a dividend. And these aren't things that are being taught in these classes. And we need to teach these kids with the real history. We can teach them about the history they teach us in the history books, but we need to teach them about Black history and where they come from. Because when I went to history class, none of the history that I was taught had anything to do with my history. And I personally, I was born in Nigeria, so I have another different history that I had to learn about myself. But I think that education is a big factor, and I think we need to put a lot of these kids in positions of power where they can make change on their own, and not necessarily just give back, water or chips or pharmaceuticals, but give back knowledge so they can be in positions of power to feed the next generation.
Yep, absolutely. Well said. And you've got the final word there. So I just want to say, I know we're out of time. Josh, Danny, Rob, Laura, thank you so much. Thank you. From your respective positions in making and affecting positive change in society. So much appreciated. And thanks.
I appreciate you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take it easy, guys.
Danny,
got it.
Thank you.